Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. And we're going to return to a brewery who I haven't had anything from in quite a while, but I have had a good few beers from them before and I've always really quite enjoyed them actually, so it's nice to see these guys back on the scene. So for this review then we are going to have a look at yet another beer from Electric Nurse. This one is simply called Imperial Stout. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and from what I gather this is a kind of old English Russian Imperial Stout type Imperial Stout, if that makes sense. But yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment for September of 2020. It was released on the 1st of September, this one, and as I said, this is the first beer that I've seen from Electric Nurse in quite a while actually. So yeah, definitely nice to see these guys back on the scene. I'm not sure exactly why there's been such an absence of their beers over the last little while, but hopefully I can try a few more from them in the fairly near future. I always enjoyed the beers that I had from these guys. The Marmalade IPA was very nice, the Dark Skull Imperial Stout was good. They've got various different variants. That's not a very good grammatical sentence. They've got lots of different variants, I guess, of the Dark Skull Imperial Stout, and that's probably their kind of flagship beer, to be honest with you, that big Imperial Stout. So I would recommend that you try that one if you get the chance. There was the Dark Skull Coconut, there was the Dark Skull Rum Barrel Aged, there was the Dark Skull Orange, if I remember rightly as well. So try that one if you get the chance. That's the one that you are probably most likely to find in different Systembolagets. But yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. A little bit lighter compared to other Imperial Stouts that we've had before, but yeah, it's just nice to try another beer from these guys after quite some time. So I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one, and let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Electric Nurse before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and check for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Electric Nurse then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you already, Electric Nurse are a phantom brewery, gypsy brewery, ghost brewery, however you want to call them, from Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. But the company was founded back in 2012 by Peter Robertson and Ida Engström. So Peter is an electrical engineer while Ida is a nurse, hence the name Electric Nurse, and those guys of course are a couple. But both of these guys love the American hoppy beers because of the big fruity characters and things like this, and they released their first beers in early 2013. More recently they've expanded their range to produce a few more different styles. Probably, as I say, their best known beer is the Dark Skull Imperial Stout, and quite recently as well they added a third member to their team, which is Jesper, and then Peter and Ida are now working full time at the brewery as well. But most of their beer is produced at Dugas Brewery, or at least it was. This beer is produced somewhere else, but they do produce some other things at different breweries in the Gothenburg area, as well as in Uppsala now as well, from what I understand. So at the moment these guys produce around 250,000 litres of beer per year, and as of October 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 155 different kinds of beer, which I have to say is pretty damn impressive actually. So I would definitely recommend that you guys have a go at some of these. They've got a really nice winter brown ale that they do. They have the Marmalade IPA is a really good one as well, Dark Skull and all the different variants that you have of that, and yeah, just a very solid brewery all round actually. And the thing that I haven't mentioned yet is that Ida is the daughter of Mikael Engström Duge, the main man behind Dugas Brewery, and I guess you could probably say one of the godfathers, if you like, of Swedish craft brewing. So definitely a brewery that you need to check out if you haven't already. Dugas Brewery are, I think, one of the best breweries that you're going to find in Sweden. Not scared to try different styles, and that seems to have kind of rubbed off on these guys. But yeah, most of the Electric Nurse beers are brewed at Dugas Brewery because of that family connection. But yeah, they do brew a few things at other breweries around Gothenburg as well. But yeah, very good brewery within their own right. this one as well, I have to say, so it's definitely nice to see them back after quite a wee while. So yeah, that's all I have to really tell you about Electric Nurse. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on with this one then and see how we go. So as you can see, you know, the obvious difference with this is the bottle shape is different. It's not in one of the kind of Dugas stubby type bottles, but yeah, 8.5% Imperial Stout. This one, from what I understand, it is supposed to be a little bit more like a kind of Old English Russian Imperial Stout type beer, an Old English Imperial Stout, so this will be quite interesting. Plain black bottle cap on this one. It says on the side here, an electrician and a nurse, we met and started brewing beer, simple. You're holding our Imperial Stout, an English beer style that was originally made for export to Russia in the 18th century, brewed with malts from 4 Swedish grains for taste and body. We've taken things to the next level with loads of American hops for a defined yet balanced bitterness. Unfiltered to retain as much taste as possible, store it in a cool dark place until serving. Peter and Ida. So yeah, this one should be pretty cool. So yeah, slightly different artwork on this one. And I'm curious about this, maybe I've told you lies that this one is going to be more of a kind of English, an Old English style Imperial Stout, but yeah, I think this one could be very, very interesting. So yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. As I said to you, this beer was released on the 1st of September 2020 as part of the Lokalos Moskalikt assortment, and yeah, it should be an interesting one. But this beer was brewed at Uppsala Bryghus, apparently, which I think is the first beer I've had from these guys that was brewed up there. So yeah, I don't know if they're the ones that brew the Slutskällens Bryghus beers or what, but yeah, definitely should be quite interesting. But as I said, 8.5% Imperial Stout, Swedish grains and American hops, so should be a little bit different, I guess. But yeah, let's have a little look at this one and see how we get on. So as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one's poured a lovely dark kind of ebony rosewood colour. If we shine the light through this, you do get a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge on the beer. But so I get the feeling from this one that if you could kind of see through these beers, it wouldn't be the most hazy. It is just a very, very dark rosewood mahogany type colour that you have on this one. You can see that this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say a kind of fawn coloured head on this one. This one isn't the darkest of heads you're going to find from an Imperial Stout. But yeah, you can see that's faded away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer. It's got a nice little kind of fawn ring around the edge of the glass there, but you know, overall it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. So yeah, take a little bit of time, just look it over, but it certainly looks good, and it looks kind of as you would expect for an Imperial Stout. Nothing overly surprising about its appearance. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I'm very curious about this. Ooh, that does smell pretty nice actually. Yeah, it's got a really nice balance to it, this one. I mean, straight away you find the balance in this beer between the roasty black malts and the kind of brown bready qualities. So yeah, roasty black malt forms the backbone of the beer. You've got a nice kind of brown bready quality to this one as well, like I said. Yeah, lovely brown bready smoothness there. There is a wee bit of a very well fired brown sugar to this beer as well actually. Yeah, there's definitely a wee bit of a kind of, there is a little touch of a brown sugary one. This isn't one of the sweeter Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across. I think that's definitely fair to say. But they're saying there's 4 grains in this one. And it says, yeah, it says on the side there, there's wheat malt, oat malt and rye malt in this one. So that would kind of make sense that it's got a good bit of bready character. If it's got rye in there, then yeah, you can definitely smell that it smells kind of brown bready for sure. So like I say, some of the roasty black malts are forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that you get that lovely kind of brown bready layer. You can smell a little touch of the wheaty bitiness out of this one. I have had a few wheat stouts recently and they're lovely and smooth actually. The wheat really adds a real kind of smooth dimension to these beers. I can't remember what the name of the one was that I had from Nerd Brewing, but they had a lovely wheat stout that Hannes gave me to try, and that was great. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is very nice. You can definitely smell a bit of that wheaty smoothness at the back of the nose there. It's almost got a little touch of bitiness to it as well. I don't smell so much of the oats in this one, but I guess they're probably in a beer like this, they're really going to affect the mouthfeel rather than anything else, and just make it feel a bit smoother and slicker almost. But yeah, as I say, roasty black malts, brown bready layer, rye bready layer, bit of wheaty character, bit of wheaty bitiness in there, and for me there is a bit of a kind of toasty, brown sugary quality to this one. It does have a little bit of a it does have a little bit of a kind of really well-fired brown sugary thing. It's not quite oily and treacly and molasses, it just comes across as a really, really toasty brown sugar for me. There is a bit of a kind of chocolatey note to this one, like a sort of 80%-ish cocoa chocolate, but again, that's not too prominent. For me, this comes across as it's really a very bready, and it's a really very kind of brown bready and wheaty type imperial stout. It comes across as very smooth in the aroma, like the brown sugars and the chocolates come across as almost more of kind of subtleties rather than anything else. There's really not a big oily brown sugary note or a big kind of sweet chocolatey note to this one, like I said. But yeah, I guess it is quite nicely done in that sense. It's a lovely smelling beer, I have to say. It's quite different though from the other imperial stouts I've had recently, but as I say, the kind of elephant in the room with this one is that it is a lower alcohol imperial stout. So yeah, I think it will be quite nice though. These guys know what they're doing with stouts. I mean, the Dark Skull, as I said, is a very, very good one. Incidentally, I forgot to say that earlier, these guys, you can find a lot of their beers at the Brewer's Beer Bar in Gothenburg. I'm not sure if Electric Nurse are part co-owners of that, but it's co-owned by Dugas Brewery and All In Brewing, the two of them. Tredje Långgatan, and I forget where the other one is, but Tredje Långgatan is the original one. But yeah, the aroma of this is lovely. On the hoppy side of things, there's a little bit of earthiness to this one, but it's not quite a big kind of dark and bitter earthiness that you would get from English hops. Definitely American hops, as they said in this one. But yeah, you've got a nice little bit of floral quality to it. I think the green side of the beer really leans more towards the lighter grassy side of it though, but you've got some really nice red fruity notes out of this one. Going by the aroma, I would suspect that it's probably Williamette or maybe Eureka that's in here. Simcoe would be an option. Simcoe can sometimes give you some really interesting properties when it comes to black IPAs and stuff. So that would be a possibility, but I've got a feeling that it's Eureka or Eureka and or a little bit of Williamette. Cascade can sometimes work quite well, but you'd have to add that very late in the brew, I think, for an imperial stout, and the beer would smell a good bit more floral than it does if these hops were added early in the boil. So maybe it's a little bit of Magnum or something they've used as the bittering hop, and then yeah, Williamette, Eureka, Cascade, Simcoe. It could be something. It could be these kind of things, but I think the most likely candidates would be Eureka and Williamette, probably. There might be other hops that I'm thinking of. Something tells me that Summit is one that you can use in imperial stouts too. But on the fruity side of things, this one's quite juicy. A lot of black curranty, blackberry notes out of it. Wee touch of juicy figgy qualities, and it's very kind of straightforward in that way. It strikes me as mainly black curranty and blackberry. There's not too much complexity to the fruitiness in this one. But yeah, quite an interesting beer this. Take a little bit of time and just ponder over the aroma, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. So this one is simply called Imperial Stout, comes in 8.5% ABV, and this one comes to you from Electric Nurse, a gypsy phantom brewery, whatever you want to call them, from Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Nice to see these guys back after a wee while. Slange, skål. Oh yeah, that's a nice beer. That is solid. That is solid. I mean, for me, this is definitely it's really quite an old school imperial stout, this one, and Peter, if I remember rightly, is English, so that's probably I can see that being what they were going for with this one. This is really more like a kind of old school English imperial stout. Yeah, it's very you'll find this beer gets very, very dry and roasty the further you go into the aftertaste with it, but it's nicely done, I have to say. So thumbs up to Electric Nurse for this. I mean, we're really used to the big kind of pastry sweet stouts these days. It's nice to have something like this in a little bit of contrast, but in fairness, if you do want something like this Nerd Brewing are very good in that sense too. You know, Hannes's beers down there, they're very, very smooth, and they do have the sweetness to them, but they've got that roastiness that this beer has. Just to let you know, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout. Don't forget what it should be. But yeah, this is a properly old school Imperial Stout, this one. It really does get very dry into the aftertaste, and I like that about it. I like having beers that are a bit, you know, that stand out a little bit in the times, you know. But yeah, when you take this beer in, it actually comes across as very wet, slick, and quite sweet, and then it's quite sweet when it's on the palate, but yeah, really this one dries out quite a lot and becomes more roasty and toasty the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, I really do like how this goes together. So in terms of the backbone of this beer then, so straight away, the middle of your palate, the middle of your palate with this one, there's some nice roasty toasty black malts there. That blankets the middle of your tongue, middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate. I think it's definitely a bit drier almost on the back third of your palate, but you can feel on that back third of your palate, you can feel that the kind of the wheaty notes there kind of thicken up the beer a little bit. I would think it's definitely fair to say that, but it really is a big dry roasty beast of a beer, this. So yeah, on top of that roasty black malt, you can feel a little bit of the brown bready character, but honestly, I think the roasty black malt pushes its way out in this one, and I don't think, I mean, when they're saying it's Swedish malt that's used in this, it's not Carafa. You know, Carafa comes across as a bit smoother than that, but that's a trademarked malt to Weirmann in Bamberg in Germany. So it's definitely, you know, obviously it's definitely not Carafa that's in this one, and you know, because that's the first thing I tend to look for when it comes to these Imperial Stouts, whether it's got that almost blend between the roasty black malts and the things. But the black malt for me is quite separated in this. Then you've got the kind of, you can feel a bit of the rye in this, but I don't think there's too much rye in this compared to other things, to be honest with you. I think the rye is a fairly small component of the malt base relatively with this one. So yeah, roasty black malts on the backbone. You can feel a little bit of the rye, especially in the middle third of your palate. So you've got black malts, rye, then you've got some of the other stuff sitting on top of that. But when you go to the back of the back third of your palate, then it's roasty black malts, wee bit of rye, and then the wheat kind of sits on top of that and sort of smoothens it out a little bit. But yeah, you do get some really roasty, toasty notes at the very, very back of the palate. So let's focus on that middle third of the palate for the moment. So yeah, you can get a little bit of the oatiness there. So in the middle third of your palate, yeah, roasty black malts, brown bread, a little bit of oatiness. There's a wee touch of a chocolatey. There is a little touch of a kind of chocolatey note to this one, and it is quite a dark chocolate. You know, a sort of 80% cocoa, something like that, very, very high. But in the centre of your palate, you do get a wee touch of a kind of, you do get a little touch of a sort of brown sugary. You do get a little touch of a kind of brown sugary note to this one. There's a little bit of, how do we say, there's a little bit of a biscuity note to it as well. But yeah, to me, this beer really is, it's a very bready, roasty, grainy type stout, this one. The chocolate and the kind of well-fired brown sugars that you get in this one are quite, they sort of just take a back seat, to be honest with you. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then move back a little bit, you'll get a few woody undertones to the beer. Maybe you could argue there's a little bit of a nutty undertone to this one. If you go to the centre of the palate and just kind of edge forward, there is a wee bit of a nutty quality to this one. So yeah, you can detect that in this one for sure. But yeah, the malt base in this, for me, this is a very kind of straightforward Imperial Stout, but I think that's one of the reasons why it works so well, to be honest with you. It's a properly old school English style stout, this one. At least that's how I would interpret it, especially with Peter being English, if memory is serving me correctly. But yeah, I like how this one, I do like how this one goes together. So yeah, thumbs up to Electric Nurse for the malt base on this. This is a properly old school stout. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. To be honest with you, if I was trying this beer, I probably would have guessed there was a little bit of Fugel in this, English Fugel, because it does have that big dry earthiness there. As you move further forward with this one, you get a nice little bit of there is a little touch of a herbal kind of floral thing there as well, but yeah, wee touch herbal. But as you move further forward, you do get a little bit more of a kind of spicy, floral, aromatic kind of thing there, and then it gradually fades out as you reach the front corners of the palate there. There's something that makes me want to say there's Magnum in here, or I don't know if you would use Columbus in a beer like this, but it does have a wee bit of that kind of distinctive Columbus spiciness to it. But I think Magnum is a more popular hop to use in these Imperial Stouts. But yeah, around the front curve of your palate you do get a little bit of a lighter grassiness to the beer as well. Then on that front third of the tongue you've got a wee bit of, you do have a little bit of a kind of juicy, fruity character, which is quite nice. And yeah, on the fruity side of things, it is quite, for me, it is quite straight up in that way as well. Like I was saying in the aroma, there's not too much in the way of complexity to this one. As you go towards the back of the front third of your tongue, you can feel there is that roasty. There's a very roasty, toasty, black grainy barrier there, which forms the border between, you know, malty side of the beer and fruity side of the beer. So you can feel that there. But if you go to the back of that, as you move forward, you can feel that there is a little bit of a kind of juicy, figgy, a juicy sort of figgy kind of note out of this one. You do get an almost little bit of a plummy quality as well, but I think that those are kind of subtleties, to be honest. But this one really is very blackcurranty and blackberry-ish, to be honest with you. It's not the most oily beer in terms of its fruitiness, which is quite interesting. I think it's more of a wet, slick kind of fruitiness that you get out of this beer, which, yeah, it's a little bit different, I would say. But yeah, this one, it is properly kind of old school, this. Yeah, but I like this. I mean, I do like this one. What I would say about this stout in comparison to the Dark Skull, this one's nowhere near as complex as that. For me, this is a lot more kind of straight shooting. It is a little bit more of a, you know, it is, as I say, I would interpret this as an old school English Imperial Stout, to be honest with you. The one thing you're going to notice if you're comparing it to those beers is the mouthfeel, and we'll come on to this now. The mouthfeel of this one it feels very clean, and again, this is a sort of, it's the paradox, if you like, of Scandinavian beers. The water quality is great here, so the beers come across as very clean. But yeah, it is quite a wet feeling Imperial Stout, this one. So I would describe this beer, it's kind of mid-bodied, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is smooth on this, it's got a really wet and slightly slick mouthfeel to it. In terms of bitterness, it is quite high in terms of its bitterness. I'd say that this, I think this has to be about 80-90 IBUs. A little bit of it comes from the hops, good bit of it's coming from the grains as well, the roasty black malt. You really will feel that roasty bitter character pushing its way out the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer. So I think about 80 IBUs with this one. At least it could be more than that. It's hard to tell. But yeah, the malt base on this one, as I say, really roasty and toasty and a little bit dry. You've got a wee touch of sweetness to it, which is quite nice. And then you've also got these nice kind of, you do have a little bit of a kind of wet, juicy, fruity character to this beer as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, this, actually. It just strikes me as an old school English Imperial Stout, this one, but the mouthfeel is a bit different to what you'd get from an English real ale type Imperial Stout, just probably because it's Scandinavian brewed and you get the really clean, pure water up here. And of course the conditioning will be different as well. The English like to drink their beers a bit warm, which is something I never got used to. I got into beer on the German conditioning, so it's not something I've ever got used to. But yeah, what I will say is a really nice Imperial Stout, this one. I like this, a properly old school English type beer, this one. For me, that's what I would that's how I would describe this one. So yeah, if you want something a little bit kind of English and old school, go for this one. If you're wanting something a little bit more American, and probably I think it's fair to say this beer is a bit more straight shooting than the Dark Skull. The Dark Skull's a properly complex American beast, to be honest. If you want something a bit more complex, go for the Dark Skull. But yeah, this, if you want to see what stouts used to be, this is definitely a good one to go for. So yeah, I'm not sure if this will be like a core range beer or exactly what we'll see. But yeah, this is the first Electric Nurse one that I've seen released in a little while actually, so I thought this would be a good one to review. So I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on this one, a proper old school English Imperial Stout in my mind. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. As always, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Electric Nurse as well. We will see about returning to these guys pretty soon. I'm not sure when they have their next released through the Localis Mosca League planned, but I do keep an eye out for this. I will keep an eye out for this brewery and see what they've gone on. This is my first review from them in a good couple of months actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. As I say, let me know your own thoughts on this one, and we will return to Electric Nurse fairly soon. But this one was simply called Imperial Stout. It came in at 8.5% ABV, and it was a really roasty, toasty, straight shooting, old English type Imperial Stout in my opinion. Slange, Skull, cheers. Make sure you check out Electric Nurse. Dark Skull is a beast, and if you can get it, Marmalade IPA, it's also a very nice one. Cheers.